Sup guys, Multiplier here, and today it's basically going to be an introduction to the best distortion plugin ever, iZotope Trash 2. Right, if you've ever kind of read any interviews with all the best producers in the world, and I've read all of them because that's where all the important info is, you basically realise that most of them use iZotope Trash and iZotope Trash 2 to do all their distortion stuff because it's amazing. And what I thought I'd do in this video is kind of give you a bit of an introduction. It's a super advanced plugin, so there's no way I can cover it all in one video. It would take about 2 hours. So I'm going to show you some, kind of dip into various bits of it, show you some cool features and kind of some useful little tips to get you going so you can start experimenting. And then I'll probably do some more videos kind of running you through each module individually, which is cool shit. So yeah, I thought I'd use an example to give you kind of example of the sort of stuff it can do. So I took a nice and basic kind of dancehall bass sound and then did like 10 minutes of processing on it to give you an idea. So kind of before the processing, it sounds a bit like this, right? Let's do it. And after the processing. Pretty awesome, right? So you can do a lot of this thing. That's a reasonably simple example. But the cool thing about this plugin is you can use it in a really simple way, whether it's just to add some subtle warmth or kind of saturation. Or you can do it in a really advanced, crazy way and do some mad shit. It's also worth noting at this stage, I might use the words distortion, kind of exciting, saturating, warmth, all that kind of stuff in the same way, because it all is basically the same thing. They're all just kind of different words for the same thing, kind of in different contexts. So whenever you hear of stuff like the words warmth or saturation, it's basically just distortion, but like done in a really nice way. So yeah, it's worth bearing that in mind. Anyway, cool. Let's get into the useful shit. So if you're used to the way that iZotope stuff works, you'll feel pretty at home already. It's a similar sort of layout to normal. But fundamentally, you've got all these buttons along the bottom, which basically show you the processing in order. So you've got filter 1 happening first, then trash, which is the distortion stage, which can happen in 2 stages if you like. It's all multiband as well, if you want it. If you want it to be, that is. You've got filter 2, which is like post-distortion filtering. Convolve, which is like reverb, but kind of the way I like to see it is kind of like small room reverb. So you don't get big tails, but the convolve reverbs in this plugin are incredible. Really, really interesting things that really add some really nice kind of space and character to your music. Just kind of make it more real and 3D and just kind of less synthetic, which is awesome. You've got a dynamics module, which is basically your compression and a bit of gating if you want. And delay, which has some cool features as well. So it's all kind of non-standard shit, which is what I like about it. So for example, even the filters have a lot more kind of potential in them than just a standard filter plugin. Just as an example, let's move this one out of the way so I can give you a good example. So if we choose, say, number 2, go down here and choose one, we've got just tons of examples. So even a simple low pass is like 10 different ways of doing it. There's like a clean low pass, there's like a resonant low pass, there's like a retro low pass, there's like a saturated low pass, there's a screaming low pass, there's a 4 different synth low passes, some vowel shit. So you see what I mean? It's just like tons of different options, each with their own kind of subtleties and stuff, which is super awesome. So what I find myself a lot of the time doing is not even using Trash 2 as a distortion plugin, but just using it for the filters or using it for the convolve reverb shit. Because you can process the filters and do stuff with them in a lot of cool ways as well. You've got a whole modulation tab, so you can modulate it based on the envelope using the incoming signal or with an LFO, so you can do loads of cool shit. It's not just a standard distortion plugin. But yeah, a cool little tip, kind of just interjecting it, is this history button. Because you may have noticed whenever you're kind of fuxing with like plugins, the undo button in your DAW, so in this case Ableton Live, doesn't really work very well. So this history button, which is available everywhere, will kind of allow you to jump back a bit and kind of undo things kind of properly. So as you saw, I moved one of the nodes, so we'll just click back a stage and it's back to where it was before, which is pretty cool. I think that history button should be much bigger, just because I've only just discovered it literally, so I must have spent the last 2 years just like ruining shit and then not knowing how to undo it, and then I've lost the cool sound I made. So that history button is super, super useful. Just because for some reason the undo button, if you go up to say edit undo, doesn't really work very well going through plugins. So history button, I'm going to say it again, super, super useful. Right, okay, cool. Yeah, let's jump in somewhere else random. This input meter, super, super important to keep your eye out on, because with distortion, the kind of the where your incoming signal is peaking determines everything. So you really want to make sure it's not coming in too hot, so it's being overly distorted, and it's not coming in too cold, so it's not been distorted enough. So if I quickly play a sound, if you ever look at this meter, you'll see there's some colors that you can use to kind of give you a bit of a clue as to what sort of level you want your signal to be at. So that's about right. You want it being yellow, but you don't want it being red. If it's red, it's coming in too hot. It's kind of like clipping a bit. If it's not going yellow, it means it's not quite kind of turned up enough, and the distortion is not going to be doing as much as it should be. So just kind of play about with the input meter until the input slider until the meter is kind of going to the right point, so that your kind of input is going yellow, which is cool. So you probably want the limiter turned on. Otherwise, especially with some of these crazy kind of filters with crazy high resonances, and a lot of your kind of what's it called, distortion, you can just end up kind of blowing up your speakers by sending in some crazy high output signals out the back of it. So just leave the limiter turned on, but keep your eye on it. If the limiter's doing too much work, then basically turn the output slider down and limit it properly kind of later on. Just worth keeping your eye out. So yeah, let's have a quick look at it's worth noting you got the dry wet slider, pretty obvious shit, same as bypass. Bypass basically bypasses the whole thing, so you can do basic A/B comparisons. They can also do some really cool shit with like ABCD comparisons, but that's kind of an advanced feature of Trash, which I'll probably show you in another video, but that's super cool stuff. And you've got presets as well. Presets are super awesome in this. There's some crazy good presets. So if you're not feeling very inspired, one of the best ways I get inspired is just load up a simple sample or a simple bass sound. Just kind of crank it through a whole bunch of different presets really quickly until one of the presets jumps out at you as something really interesting, because there's some super interesting presets there. Anyway, I want this video to be under 10 minutes, so I should probably dip into the distortion bit, because it is a distortion plugin. So as you see, there's a shitload of settings, but the best place to start is just keep it in stage 1, so you're only doing 1 bit of distortion. You've got a whole bunch of different distortion kind of, well, they're called bases, but you can just call them types of distortion for now. So you can kind of choose, this is just one list, and then there's another list, and each one of these gives you a different style of distortion, and then a lot of these will have their own individual sliders. So let's try and pick one that has a few different. That's a good example. There you go. Here's a good example. So this one has not only a drive slider, which is kind of adjust the amount of processing, or just kind of almost the amount of distortion, but it's also got a style, and this meter is just kind of like a second parameter for that distortion. It's pretty cool. So with each distortion type, you've got not only how hot the signal. You've got so many settings. It's awesome. But for now, probably the best thing to do is just focus on the drive and the style. Which is pretty cool shit. And then just to give you an idea of how advanced this can get, you got multiband, so you can like process each frequency range, many different, up to 4 different frequency ranges. Process each one separately. You can do 2 stages of distortion. You can even create your own distortion curves and then combine that with a bass. So if you've got a bass, you can then kind of add your own nodes in and kind of draw in your own curves and shit, so you can see it gets pretty mental. And you've got tons more settings, and it's just pretty crazy. But best thing to do is just get into it and just keep experimenting. Start with a simple setting, so just keep it simple for now. probably don't do multiband or do a simple multiband setup. Choose a bass and then just kind of fuck about with the drive setting or the pre and the style. And that'll get you off the ground at least. But it's crazy what the thing can do. There's convolve bit as well, is super good. I mean, I pretty much use this convolve bit just as almost like a standalone plugin quite a lot on a lot of my shit. Just because there's just so many awesome different kind of convolve reverbs to choose from. So you see each of these settings has a ton of different options. There's a monkey, there's a pig, there's a snake, there's a toad, etc. As well as some more standard kind of mixing shit. So you got loads of guitar amps to choose from. And the cool thing about it is you can just adjust the mix of it, so you don't have to run it like super noticeable, but it can be a really nice way of adding some subtle interest to an otherwise simple sound. And then for each one, you've also got a whole bunch of other settings like the width of it, how much it's kind of separated between the left and the right channels. Just going to give it a bit of width kind of deal. And then if you want to get even more advanced, you can choose the type of mic even. Best just leave it on dynamic unless you know what you're doing. Or what you could do is just kind of choose condenser or choose ribbon and see if you like it. If not, leave it as dynamic. But yeah, it's super good stuff. And then delay, again, reasonably self-explanatory. Cool thing about this delay is it's got all the standard settings like feedback, the delay. Which you can either sync to the tempo of the track or leave it just as a time. But what makes this really cool is what's called this like trash slider and the width slider. So by choosing these different modes over here, it determines how processed the delay signal is every time it iterates. So the best way to kind of hear it is just to have a bit of an experiment. Crank up the trash slider, which determines kind of how heavily the delay signal is processed, and then just choose these different ones. And it can be, again, it's quite a subtle thing normally, unless you use it in a really kind of really crazy way, but it's really nice, especially some of these kind of analog and tube settings. It can be a really nice way to add some quote unquote warm kind of ambience with the delay. And then you've got the width as well, which is just awesome shit really. And again, I've sometimes used the delay just by itself as a standalone plugin, because you can turn off the distortion. You don't have to use all of these, you can just kind of use one bit at a time or use all of it. But yeah, that's basically your intro. Is there any other useful little tips? 12-minute video, can't really make it run anymore. Graph, yeah, it's probably a useful little one. If you click the graph button down here, circle effect. You can, that circle effect wasn't needed. You can kind of change the order of how you want things doing. So you can either run them all in series or kind of change the order of the filters, or even put shit in parallel, like that. Can you put 3 in parallel? Maybe not. Maybe you can just put filters in parallel. Whatever. It's pretty cool shit though, right? So you can see how you can really just adapt this plugin to do whatever you like. But yeah, now giving you a bit of an intro, have an experiment. That's the best way to do this. Because it's such a versatile plugin, there's no real one way of using it for one style of thing. You can use it for absolutely anything. Whether it's kind of just adding a little bit of subtle warmth, or kind of filling out the frequency range of some simple sounds, through to going completely nuts with your kind of Skrillexy, noisier style kind of shit. And if you are wondering, yes, this is the plugin that Skrillex uses for all his distortion. And same with Noisier, Glitch Mob, basically all the big guys. This is the one. Homicide is all right, but it's just nowhere near as good as this. So yeah, cool. That's been your intro video. What I will do is probably a whole bunch of videos kind of running through each module in a bit more detail, as well as probably giving you some hands-on examples kind of some things you can do with it. But if you can't bother to wait for those videos, iZotope have a really good guide on their website called they call it the iZotope Trash 2 Cookbook, which gives you kind of like 10 examples of some basic ways you can use Trash 2. So I'd say head over to there and check them out. If not, wait for me to do some videos. But yeah, that's a Trash 2. And if you're not excited yet, or you're stupid, because this is the greatest thing ever. Right, cool. There's your video.